Jasper, a tiny red wolf, stood shivering in the thick, suffocating Georgia mist. He was starving, his small body a map of ribs and exhaustion. As a predator, he should have been the hunter, but tonight he was just a ghost lost in the marsh. Suddenly, a hollow moan echoed from a crumbling abandoned farmhouse nearby. It wasn't the sound of prey, it was a plea for mercy. Faced with a choice between his own survival and a stranger's pain, Jasper stepped toward the ruins. There, bound by heavy, rusted iron chains, he found a mother dog who had long ago given up on hope. Jasper didn't turn back. He followed the hollow sound through the tall, wet grass of the marsh, his paws sinking into the mud with every step. Thorns pulled at his red fur, and the damp air felt heavy in his lungs, but the cry kept him moving. He emerged from the mist to find an old, decaying farmhouse. The wood was rotting, and the porch sagged under the weight of years of neglect. There, huddled against a splintered post, was Clara. Her golden fur was matted with mud and burrs, her eyes clouded with a weary kind of grief. Wrapped tightly around her neck was a heavy, rusted iron chain, secured by a padlock that looked impossible to break. Beside her, a tiny pup named Pip lay shivering, his feeble whimpers barely audible against the creaking of the house. Looking at them, something shifted deep inside Jasper. He wasn't born with this kind of courage. In the dim light of the porch, he was suddenly transported back to a different forest, a different night. He remembered the fading warmth of his mother's side, a warmth that had vanished in a single, terrifying instant. There had been a sharp crack, a gunshot that shattered the silence of the woods. Then only the smell of gunpowder and the crushing weight of the quiet. Jasper had waited in a dark cave for 3 long days, his ears swiveling at every breeze, hoping to hear his mother's footsteps. But she never came back. He knew the exact weight of a silence that meant you were truly alone. He knew the biting cold that sets in when you realize no one is coming to save you. Jasper wasn't acting out of glory or a grand sense of duty. He didn't save Clara because he was a hero. He saved her because he knew exactly what it felt like to be the one left behind in the dark. He looked at the iron chain, then at the rising shadows of the jam. Lay. He wouldn't let the quiet take them. Not tonight. The mist wasn't just cold anymore, it was heavy with the scent of wet fur and something far more dangerous. Shadows shifted at the edge of the clearing, and then the eyes appeared, dozens of flickers of pale yellow circling closer. A pack of coyotes, lean and hungry, had caught the scent of Clara and her pup. To them, the iron chain wasn't a tragedy, it was a dinner bell. Jasper didn't hesitate. He stepped out from the porch and planted his feet in the red Georgia clay, directly in the path of the lead coyote. He let out a ferocious snarl, a sound that seemed much too large for his small, trembling body. It was a stand that made no sense. In the wild, you run. You survive. You don't die for a stranger. But inside Jasper's mind, something extraordinary was happening. Scientists call it the activation of mirror neurons, the neurological bridge of empathy. As Jasper looked at Clara's terrified eyes, the part of his brain that registered pain began to fire in perfect synchronization with hers. He wasn't just witnessing her fear, he was experiencing it as his own. The biological boundary between wild and domestic had dissolved. In that moment, Jasper didn't see a dog, he saw a mirror of his own broken past. He was no longer a predator or a scavenger. He was a protector. But the coyotes were closing in, their snarls growing louder, their circle tightening. Jasper realized that his tiny teeth and shaky legs wouldn't be enough to hold them back for long. He needed a power far greater than his own, and he needed it before the shadows took them both. Jasper realized the math of the wild was against him. One pup, even one with the heart of a wolf, could not stop a pack. He looked at Clara one last time, her head resting on her paws in total surrender, and then he turned and ran. He didn't run deeper into the marsh to save himself. He ran toward the edge of the woods, toward the hard, cold surface of the road. His lungs felt like they were filled with fire. His paws, used to the soft moss of the swamp, stung as they slapped against the gravel and then the pavement. The road was a dark, empty ribbon. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the sound of his own desperate breathing. Then a low rumble started to shake the earth. Headlights appeared around the bend, cutting through the Georgia fog like two searchlights. This was the moment of truth, a choice between the instinct to survive and the will to be seen. Jasper didn't hesitate. He summoned the last of his strength and sprinted directly into the path of the oncoming vehicle. He planted his feet, braced his tired legs, and stared into the blinding white light. Imagine being less than 10 pounds and facing down a 2-ton wall of steel. Every fiber of Jasper's being screamed at him to dive for the safety of the ditch, to hide in the shadows where it was safe. But he knew that if he disappeared, Clara and Pip would disappear too. He stood his ground, a tiny silhouette against the glare. He was betting his life on the hope that a human would look down and see more than just a stray animal. The screech of tires was deafening, a violent protest of rubber against asphalt that ended just inches from his nose. Smoke curled from the wheels. A door swung open and Sheriff Miller stepped out, his face a mask of shock and annoyance. But Jasper didn't move. He looked up, his eyes wide and pleading. He wasn't just an animal in the road anymore. He was a messenger, and he was out of time. Sheriff Miller grabbed his flashlight and a pair of heavy bolt cutters from the trunk. He didn't know why he was following a wild animal into the marsh, but the intelligent desperation in Jasper's eyes was impossible to ignore. They crashed through the thick brush, the fog clinging to Miller's uniform like a cold shroud. When they reached the farmhouse, the scene was a living nightmare. The coyotes were inches from the porch, their teeth bared, ready to tear into the helpless animals. "Get out of here! Go on!" Miller roared, his voice booming across the clearing. The pack scattered instantly, their yellow eyes vanishing into the shadows of the swamp. He rushed to the porch where Clara was huddled, shielding Pip with her own exhausted body. The heavy iron chain was pulled taut, biting into her skin. With one swift metallic snap, the bolt cutters bit through the rusted links. The tension finally broke. Clara slumped forward, free at last, and immediately began nudging her pup, a low, rhythmic whine of relief vibrating in her chest. Miller knelt down to check them for injuries, and his fingers brushed against Clara's worn leather collar. He pulled out a small bent metal tag and shone his light on it. His breath caught in his throat. The name engraved on the back wasn't the dog's. It was the name of a man Miller had been hunting for 2 long years. It was the prime suspect in a cold case that had haunted the county and nearly cost Miller his badge. He realized then that Jasper hadn't just saved a life. He had led the law to the one piece of evidence that changed everything. The silence of the marsh was finally broken, not by a cry, but by the weight of justice. Today, the cold mist of the marsh is a distant memory. Jasper, Clara, and Pip are finally safe, huddled together in the warmth of the rescue sanctuary. Sheriff Miller didn't just walk away after that night. He became their permanent sponsor, ensuring that this unlikely family would never be hungry or alone again. It is a profound irony of our world. A human hand forged that rusted iron chain to imprison and tuos jolt life. But it was also a human hand that held the bolt cutters to bring salvation. Our tools can be used to destroy, or they can be used to heal. The choice is always ours. Jasper taught us that true bravery isn't always about having the sharpest teeth or the loudest howl. It's about the wisdom to know when you cannot win alone. By standing in front of Miller's car, Jasper practiced active surrender, the courage to admit his limits so he could find a greater strength to protect those he loved. Kindness is a language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Have you ever dared to surrender like Jasper to find your true strength? Share this story if you believe in miracles that transcend species.